Well, welcome to the first official in-person recording of the Mature-ish podcast. Today, our guest is Dawson. I want to say thank you for your patience as I struggled to set all of this up. I always thought I was technologically literate until I started playing around with this editing and recording software, and now I feel like I'm either 5 years old or 85 years old.
First one, then the other.
Yeah. So my name is Eric. Would you care to introduce yourself?
My name is Dawson. I'm 42, and I'm living my life to the fullest right now.
Awesome. Do you see any other junk in the camera there?
Nope.
I want to maintain the illusion of professionalism for this podcast.
Other than your coffee cup? Nope.
Magnificent. So Dawson, where are you from?
I am from Edmonton. I was born to a mom and dad. My dad's he's a first generation immigrant from Scotland, and my mother is from northern Alberta.
Cool. And so your mom is Indigenous Albertan?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, she comes from Saddle Lake. It's a Cree tribe. It's just before, it's beside Goodfish and just south of Slave Lake.
So how long did you live there until you moved?
I lived there for, I think, until I was about 11. We lived in a house that was an old Victorian house. It was one of those, like those cliche, like farmhouses that really tall windows and like really tall doors, and everything has like with those old timely key locks in it. Like I lived in an old house. It was an old house. We even had a coal shed that fed into the basement. So it was old.
Cool.
It was old, but it was actually a really nice house.
Did you have a lot of neighbors, or was it kind of more?
No, we had the Scottish Society, which was like a big soccer field that they used for Robbie Burns Day, and what was it? There's another thing that they did, but they also had soccer tournaments there. So we would only hear neighbors maybe once or twice a year, and it was in the summer.
That must have been nice.
It was. We had a horse. We had chickens. It was nice. We were a very secluded family.
How big was your family? Do you have brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I have one of each. I have a sister who's still with us, and I have a brother who's passed away, but I don't remember how long ago.
Was it in childhood or adulthood?
It was in adulthood, and it was by suicide, and by the time I came to after, it had been quite some time. I say it was 2 years, but I know it was either just a little bit over or a little bit under. I didn't realize it had been that long after when I started to talk about it, so I kind of missing a couple of years.
So you said when you came to.
Yeah, after he died, I went on a crack binge.
Okay.
I threw the relationship that I had for 8 years prior to that into the garbage, the work that I had been doing into the garbage, and I went couch surfing for, I think, 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that your first time trying drugs?
No.
Okay, so before we get into that, let's get a little bit more of the family history. So were your parents together most of your childhood?
Yeah, they were married. They got married, then they had me, then my brother and sister. They're still together. They're still married. My sister lives in southern Calgary, and my parents live in a small town just outside of Calgary.
And your childhood had, you had horses and whatnot, so it seems like you came from like more or less a well taken care of home. Did you guys struggle for money a lot?
We were well off. I remember when I was a kid, my dad was making, I think it was like, I don't know, it was like $1,000 or $3,000 a month, but this is in the 80s. So that was a lot of money.
Enough to get by at least.
Yeah, we had money, so much money that when we were in church, that the parishioner guy was actually talking down to my dad and telling him about the tithe and about how it has to be 10% of what he makes, and he has to give it to the church now. And then my dad walked out of church and never went back.
That doesn't seem very godly of them, hey?
Yeah.
So that was kind of a small town church, right? So their tithes were pretty limited.
Yeah. So once people figured out what kind of money my dad made, it was different. I didn't understand that until I was older, that that's what was going on, and yeah,
Was there like contention there then? Or is it uncomfortable going to church?
we never went back.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. I
Yeah.
don't blame you. Was there that the only church that was in your range?
No, I went with my grandmother. My grandmother's Scottish and she's Protestant. And she, when I would spend the weekends with her, I would go to church with her. When I was younger, my family life wasn't all that great. We had a lot of money. It was really comfortable, but my sister and my brother they're very light skinned, so that they could pass as Caucasian, and then you have me. So I was always the third one out, the third wheel. So my family would always drop me off at my grandmother's, and like one of my earliest memories is watching my family go out for a walk while I'm sitting in my room. So it was like there was a lot of alone time that I had even when I was a kid.
So you were really close with your grandma
Yeah,
and not as close with your parents?
still today.
Okay. Did your parents fight a lot, or were you and your other relatives close?
I really only ever saw my mom leave once. All I remember is her packing her bags and leaving. I don't remember what that fight was about. Just all I know is that she left, and she left me and my brother and sister with my dad, and I don't know what happened. I just remember watching the truck drive away and my dad not knowing what to do.
Did your parents have any addiction issues?
Hey, um, yeah, they're very heavy alcoholics. Um, I didn't see that. Like I thought that was just normal, like adult stuff. But now that I'm in recovery, it's like I know you're not supposed to like take other people's inventory, but you just sit there and it's like almost like a train wreck. You don't want to watch, but you know what's gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fun to watch, but you can't look away either.
No, you
Yeah,
can't.
I know that feeling. So what was school like? Did you have a lot of friends? Were you
No.
successful academically?
Um, okay, so when I was a kid, we used to live in Ellerslie. It was like a little like suburb of Edmonton. Um, and then when I started to actually go to real school, so it was like middle school, we moved. They actually bought a house in Devon, just outside of Devon. It was 40 acres. It was perfect. It was actually a really, really nice place. Um, and I went to an all-white school. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was a rural school. I was the only brown kid, so it was like you could pick me out of the school picture. I was like, and it was like the whole school was in like one big bleacher, and it's like, dude. I was literally the only.
So just strictly white, just strictly Caucasian people.
Yeah, and
No
my
mixed
brother and sister
races.
fit right in. It was so weird. But yeah, it got to the point where I remember my mom had to come in and tell off the school principal because the way that I was being treated, and she ended up moving me to Spruce Grove, which was it was more multicultural. They had a Japanese exchange program there, so it was an international. Well, I mean at the time it was international, so I had to go to a different school in order for me to fit in.
Okay, so you felt like a bit of an outcast.
Yeah.
Did you feel like an outcast in your own home as well?
Yeah. My family figured out I was gay at a really young age. My dad got really violent, and my mother Bible thumped me. So I never really got. I never understood who I was or what was going on. I will tell you though, like the first time I ever admitted it to myself, it was like I'd never felt such relief in my entire life. That I knew something about myself, and it was something that was concrete, that I knew that that's what that was. However, it got violent, and I remember one time I actually had to go and write into a piece of wood that if I ever went missing, that it would probably be my dad's fault, and I had to actually hide it in the house. Like it would be like one of those situations where, like, if I went missing, that I'm pretty sure you would find, if the cops went looking for me, they would find it. Like that's how well I had to hide it.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you were afraid for your life,
Yeah.
and that's how bad this abuse got.
Yeah. I had it down to a science. I would go to school, I would run home, I would I would make myself a dinner, grab myself a glass of milk, and run downstairs and barricade myself in the room just before he would pull in the driveway. And I would purposefully do that just so that I could get away from him. I didn't want him around me at all.
And so family dinners, that those weren't really a thing.
They were, and I I I don't know. I a lot of the memories I have of that, like I remember my dad was so angry that we had seasoning salt. He went into the kitchen and grabbed all the spices and threw them off the deck. Like I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why he had to be like that.
And looking back now, you remember that it was he like maybe more intoxicated when he made those decisions,
Oh yeah.
or is this just his personality?
No, and it's his personality. I remember I was going for a run and like he was standing in the big bay window like mocking me and making fun of me, and I'm just like, you're a grown man. What's wrong with you? I
Mm.
don't understand that.
How did they find out? You said you didn't make it sound like you came out to them.
So this is when I started running from my problems. I ran away from home a lot. I ran away to Edmonton. Um, my grandfather found me one time on the way and brought me back to the house, and then I left again. And I ended up at the youth emergency shelter in Edmonton on White Avenue. And my mom, I don't remember how it happened, but I somehow manipulated my caseworker into coming out for me to my mother. And I don't remember how I did it, but I just remember them both looking at me like my worker was just appalled that she actually fell for it, and that my mom was just like, what's going on here? And then so it was like, it was weird. I don't know how I did it, but I just remember doing it. And then afterwards it was like, hey, this is over. And then I left.
How old were you?
14.
14, already running away from home to a different city.
Yep.
And you went to a youth shelter, and was this like during the school year?
Oh yeah.
So you were missing school, or did you get yourself? How long were you gone, I should ask?
The minute I got away, I never went back.
Wow. Okay. So was that the end of your school career, or did you find yourself in another school?
I tried outreach programs. They didn't work. I didn't actually, my life didn't actually calm down until I met my common law husband, or whatever, common law partner, when I was 23. And I ended up going to school for an administration certificate. And then while I was there, I ended up getting a practicum with Insta Loans, and I ended up becoming a loans officer.
Okay. So 14, you ran away. 23, you met your common law. There's a pretty big gap there. So you were in that time. You were you were living in a shelter for most of that time.
Actually, in a shelter on the streets, and at my aunt's house or my uncle's house, whoever would let me stay there. Um, I ended up when I was 14, while I was on the streets. We ended up actually we were panhandling on White Avenue. There was a group of kids, and we were panhandling on White Avenue so that we could get our dope, that we could go to the rave, we could go hang out, we could do whatever. Because back in those days, all you really need was ID, and you can get into the raves, and you could, however old you were. So we would panhandle during the week. Everybody would get enough money to go rent a hotel room. We would go to the rave, and then we would go get our dope, and then we would use. Now, after a while, I discovered that there was a stroll. I didn't know that. I don't know how I found it. I just knew what it was, and I started working uh, uh, in the sex trafficking industry when I was 14, and going to the gay bars. Now, at that time, I didn't understand like age of consent. I didn't understand any of that, and I continued to do that until I actually met my common law. My first boyfriend was a prostitute just like me, and one night we ended up getting a hotel room with this other prostitute, but she was a girl. Anyway, so I fell asleep, and they ended up sleeping together. And I was laying there, and I'm hearing this go on. I'm like, okay, I'm totally not into this, and I was gonna get up and leave. And it's a good thing I did because I didn't see him for weeks after that. And then it turned out that he got sick from that prostitute.
This is your common law.
No, this was my boyfriend
Your
when I was
first
14.
boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he got sick. You're happy you didn't catch that. And was that the end of that relationship with him?
I just remember he came up one day and I hadn't seen him in weeks and I didn't know where he was. And he just told me that he's like, yeah, I'm sick. I got sick from that person and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I didn't even know what it was. And then that was the last time I saw him for a couple of years. Then it was just, yeah, I perpetually set myself up for failure. Like I remember being a runner for my family because I remember the first time I ever smoked crack. I think I was like 14, and it was the first time I'd actually ever been happy. Up until then, I didn't know that that was a synthetic happiness. I just knew that that was like, it made me feel good.
Was that the first drug you tried?
No, the first drug I tried was weed. When I was in Spruce Grove, I was drinking what they call bombs. So we would get a big bottle and we'd all steal alcohol from our family and pour it in. We would all drink that. And then I started smoking weed. And then when I ran away from home, I stayed at my aunt's, and at my aunt's, I ended up going to this biker party up in Belvedere, and all I remember is I didn't understand why everybody looked like women, because all the guys had long hair, all the women had long hair, and I grew up in a Scottish household, so everything was like trimmed and cut and tucked in, and everything was nicely made. And here I'm in a house filled with people with everybody had long hair, and everybody looked like women for some reason. I didn't understand what that meant. And that was, I remember the glass table. I remember that like the smoke ring along the ceiling. I remember who was there, and I just remember the very first time I'd ever smoked crack, and I spent 27 years chasing that high. I remember being the runner. Back then, you could go to the store and get cigarettes if you said it was for your grandmother or whatever. They'd give it to you. But then again, it was under $5, and it was a very different time. I remember that everybody would get so high or plastered, and then I would be the runner, so I'd have to run to the store to get money and cigarettes and come back. And that's how I ended up getting my dope. Is I would do that, and then I remember one time. I had the bright idea that, hey, they don't want to share it with me? Okay, fine. So they sent me to the store, and as I was pulling out the money, I walked away with, I think, like $400. And I came to, at the end of that weekend downtown, I went to a rave somehow, and I don't remember much. I just remember having to go back. And I just remember that, they were gonna do some horrible things to me, and they made me sit in the back bedroom. And I remember sitting there waiting for whatever they were doing. I was playing a Game Boy, but now that I sit there and think about it, like they were gonna end my life for the money that I took.
Over $400.
Yeah, it was a different time. That was a lot of money. And they were. I was sitting there playing a Game Boy, not thinking about anything. Like I was a kid.
14.
Yeah. And I could hear them talking to my mom, like, you got to give us that money, blah, 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 blah. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then all of a sudden the whole room just went quiet and they hung up the phone. And then all I could hear was my aunt saying, blah, blah, blah. I said, just do it. And like the whole room was quiet. And at that time I didn't understand, right? I was a kid. I'm sitting in the back bedroom, coming down off a crack, playing a Game Boy. And like I'm hearing this stuff go on, and I didn't understand what that meant. And like all I remember is they called my name, and I went out there, and my aunt told me what they had said, and then they told me what my parents had said, and then all they said was like, you got to leave, and you can never come back. So I left.
And where'd you go?
The Stroll, the gay bar.
And that was your introduction into the sex trade?
No, that was I had been doing that prior.
Did your family know about it?
No, they didn't know anything about that.
So they kicked you out. They wanted nothing to do with you. They didn't care where you went.
Yeah.
And cell phones weren't really as common.
There was that was the payphone days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from that point on, I don't really remember much. The the thing that I remember the most is that I there's a sad one. There's a sad memory and there's a happy memory. The happy memory is that I had been going to the gay bar for 2 or 3 years prior to me turning 18. And when I turned 18, I went to the gay bar and I'm like, hey, I just turned 18. Hey, look, can I have can I celebrate my birthday? And without thinking about it. And then I got banned from the gay scene in Edmonton. So, yeah, I had been going to that bar about 3 years prior and I knew everybody by first name. So that was funny. The other one is the sad memory. I remember when we used to panhandle for money. Us street kids got together and we rented a hotel room. We had found somebody who was safe, who was 18. It was this chick. She's like, I don't care. I just want to go to bed. We were like, okay. So we found someone safe and she rented a room. She passed out, and then I think I and another guy were trying to get a hold of the dealer, and we were calling them, and they're like, it's going to be like 2 hours before I can get there. But like, just wait. So anyway, as we were waiting, everybody had passed out, and there was people there from the age of 13 to 18, guys and girls, and we were just like we were strewn across the whole hotel room, and then all of a sudden, I just remember I'm about to pass out. I'm laying on the bed. I'm closing my eyes, and all of a sudden, the door just gets kicked in, and it was the cops. He had his car. He had his gun drawn they didn't have tasers back then. It was his gun drawn, and I just remember the look in his face. He just went white. His whole face went white.
The cops?
Yeah. And the only thing he could say was like, holy, they're just kids. And it's just like, I remember that, like his face just went white. He was expecting, I don't know, but like it was a hotel room filled with street kids, and that's all he could do. And then I remember the other cop reaching in, and the guy couldn't even look. He grabbed the other cop. He's like, just let them sleep. Just let them sleep.
What'd they come for?
Well, the phone was tapped. We were calling a dealer, and it must have been somebody who was probably either high up or something else, because like they were determined to get in. They didn't open the door. They kicked it in.
They didn't knock?
No.
Wow, that must. And you didn't have anything at this point. You were still waiting for the dealer to come.
and
they didn't bother searching.
They didn't do anything. Like one cop just said, just let them sleep, and he grabbed the other cop by the shoulder and pulled him out. And all I remember is the kerfuffle out in the hallway, and they were just like, just let them sleep. And then they shut the door, and I just closed my eyes and I went back to bed.
So you didn't end up getting high that night?
I don't remember. I think we rented that hotel room for a couple more days or something. I don't remember. I just remember somebody had given me fat pants and I went to a rave. So it was like awesome.
So your main income at this point was the sex trade. Were you a daily user of crack?
No, I moved to meth. Once I got into the rave scene, it was the same thing. The first time I ever tried it, it was like I'd never had energy like that. I felt like I could run marathons. I felt like I could have done anything, and it was just the same thing. After that, it was like 25 years of chasing meth. And I would use meth to get off the crack and crack to get off the meth. And it would be like with little stints in between because one wouldn't work while you were using the other. And that was 25 years of doing that. Like, towards the end, like I couldn't get high enough anymore. I actually started injecting in the last 7 years of my addiction. Because I had done so much up until that point where I couldn't get high anymore. Like I would get high and go to bed. I would literally, that was my MO. I would just get high. People didn't like using with me because it weirded them out that I would do so much and then I would just go to bed. And that was it. I would lay there.
You weren't doing it for fun at that point. You're doing it because you had to do it.
Yeah. I didn't want to exist. By that time, the digital age came in, right? Up until then, like I was with my common law, and we were good. We were good, and then I was a closet crackhead smoker, or a crack smoker, and I would go to work and I would do my thing, and then I would smoke crack while he was at work. But then it was weird because it was like while I was at home smoking crack, he was out, fooling around. So it was like it was really a very interesting
Dynamic.
yeah.
And you said you were with him for 9 years,
Yeah.
and that was in Edmonton or in Calgary?
Edmonton.
Okay. And so then, how did that relationship end?
I left. I do what I always do when things get to be too hard. I walk away. Yeah.
So moving back a little bit, actually, how has working in the sex trade while you're struggling with your addiction, how has that impacted your relationships with other men in a more intimate setting?
Um, it's a little bit scary because I'm always like, because of the sex trade, I found that I thought I was really submissive. Like I lived a life of servitude, not only towards men, but my family used me as like a live-in babysitter or a house cleaner. It was really weird. I didn't come to this realization until this time around in recovery when I did my step one. But now that I've been sober long enough, it's like I'm starting to come into my own. I didn't realize that, okay, maybe I'm not submissive. I'm no longer owned or bought or sold, right? And it's like now my life dynamic is changing because it's like I had been in servitude for so long. Now that I have sanity and I have a little bit of direction, it's like, like I have boundaries. I have I have these things set in place where it's like, like at first I didn't like being touched, but I couldn't figure out why. And then it turns out it's just because touch it's more of an intimate connection. And I was tired of becoming more intimately connected with somebody who was using me as a transaction rather than a relationship. So I would become connected to these people, and then it turns out, no, you're here for like 3 hours, and then you got to go, man, right? And so it's like after that, it was I'm starting to build um, boundaries and to be a little bit more healthy with the people who I let into my life. Like I have a keen eye because of my trauma. I'm very hyper vigilant. I see things in people, and I know I can decipher who's safe and who's not, but from time to time it's a little bit off because of just the way that I used to be. I didn't care who you were as long as I could get your money into your pants and get you out as quickly as I could so I can go sit there and use by myself. Right? But now it's a little bit more different. I feel like I'm gravitating towards people who are visually invested in themselves, right? It's like I'm trying to build relationships with people at the gym, right? And people who are going to school and people who have a job. It doesn't mean that you have to be like a millionaire or whatever. Just somebody who I see going to work every day, no matter what, coming home clean, doing that kind of stuff. Like I'm gravitating towards more of these people. Now, in a romantic sense, it's just I had to get past using people as an ATM. I had to get past using men as a sex object and an ATM, and I had to get used past using them as an ATM, a sex object, or a drug dealer. And I didn't realize that those were the three types of people that I categorized everybody into. But the thing is like when you boil it down, it's just like, what can I get out of you as fast as I can to get you away from me?
So you were telling me earlier you were pretty interested, if not surprised, at how the type of person that you're attracted to these days is changing quite significantly.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask like what kind of person were you attracted to in the past, but now I'm kind of leaning more towards asking, did you ever remember actually feeling attracted to people, or
No.
was it was more what you could get out of the relationship?
Yeah. This is probably the first time I've ever had feelings. Um, I I found out in this time of recovery that I'm a really good mimic. I'm also a really good. I have a facade, and I wear a multitude of masks. It took a really long time for me to get past that fact, But, like in recovery, once I started to become rigorously honest and I did my step one and I had to take a step back and look like this is the person who I had built, that's when the mask started to come off, and that's when I started to grow as a person. There's some things about my life I don't like. Um, like I realize now that I've been alone for the entire time that I've used, right? And like and in this time in recovery over the last 10 years, I've been single for 10 years. Like I never went on a date until actually this time in recovery. Like I didn't know, I was sitting in the cafeteria one time, and everybody was talking about relationships and this and that, and then somebody had brought up this thing, they were going on a date, and it broke me. I was like, I've never actually been on a date.
So you feel like you're kind of experiencing all these things for the first time.
Yeah, it's devastating. But at the same time, it's amazing and it's fun because I get to learn about this. I get to be like whoever I want to be. You know, I have to like get out of my own way and like go with my higher power. And sometimes it's not really easy because there's a lot of things that I have to do that I don't want to do. You know, but over time, it's not like anything weird. It's just doing the next right thing, right? Um, I have to be a little bit more vigilant on the fact that I take other people's inventory a lot, and that has nothing to do with me whatsoever. I've come to that realization that has nothing to do with me. Like the only thing that I have power over or control over is my reaction and my reality, and that's it. And it's like when people start to infringe on that, it's like I start to realize, okay, you're not where I'm at and I'm not where you're at, and we're incompatible, so now you are just an acquaintance.
It's extremely healthy, I've been told, at least, to be able to draw those boundaries and have your non-negotiables. And I think that shows you're a good step above a lot of people in terms of dealing with their codependency issues, in that you're able to be self-sustaining. But I just want to say it's a very interesting perspective that after all of that experience, what you took from it is you get to be whoever you want to be. And it's almost like you kind of start forming yourself, not from childhood to who you are today, but you're kind of starting the construction process. Who is Dawson as an adult? And you're finding the pieces that you want to put together now, rather than trying to reconfigure what you've already been told. You're starting with a blank slate now.
Yeah. So I did my steps. I saw the person who I built, and after when I was done my steps, I had to put that person to rest. When I was on the streets, I used to call myself DJ, and I had to mourn the loss of that person. However, through the steps, I found pieces of me that I wanted to keep. Like I am articulate. I'm very intelligent. I'm also wise. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's weird. My perception game is really on point, and I don't know. I want to say it's precognitive almost because it's a little bit creepy sometimes, but at the same time. There's some things that I still have to work on, but like even with that base, like through my step one, I saw like I went to college. I got myself into university on the first try. I'm reliable. I have all of these really good assets and character assets that these are the pieces that I need to plant and watch them grow, right? Because on this side of the steps and on this side of recovery, it's really, really, really different. Like I remember wanting to just rush through all this stuff and go live my life. But in all honesty, like if I didn't actually do the steps and do the process, everything else fell into place. Right? Like the job was offered to me, and it was really weird how it happened. Like I work now. I daydream about doing taxes. Like it's the weirdest thing. Like I've never actually daydreamed about it, but here we are. Like there's so many different parts, and like working working bits and pieces of life that I never thought were actually um, like viable. Like I didn't realize that, having a conversation where I talk to you about your day first rather than going up and talking to you, right? It's you're talking with the person. I didn't know that that was an intricate part in conversation, right? Until once I realized that, it was like I listened to the way that I talk to people, and I wasn't talking with people. I was talking to people, right? Not no reciprocation, no listening, no, and if there was an apology to be had, it was excuses and then I'm sorry. It wasn't just I'm sorry, owning up to the situation and seeing how to fix it, right? Like there's just like even just in conversation alone, like I didn't realize that there was that kind of stuff, like even now it's like I'm a little bit lovesick. I really want to know what it's like to be in a relationship, but then I get hit with like moments of senility where it's like I'm gonna get into a relationship and in a month in there I'm gonna be like I don't want to be in a relationship, but I don't want to do the whole I love to hate you and hate to love you kind of thing. So it's like I have to take a step back and work on communication and connection before I can actually jump into something like that. It's not like how it was when I was using before. It was a transaction.
Mm.
Now like the most important part of a person that I've found so far is their heart, right? It's not something to be toyed with. It's not something that you can buy or sell like people think they can do, but that's the one thing in you know in my journey that I know that no matter what, it's going to tell you the truth.
That's a difficult spot to be in, isn't it? Knowing that you want a relationship, but not being sure that you're ready to nurture a relationship.
I just don't want to play with someone else's heart. I've had it done to me for my entire life, and I am scared that if someone trusts me with that, like I would probably do everything in my power to make sure that never happened to that heart, because it's like my heart was like when I got into recovery, it was black. Like it was black. Like I like it was weird. It was like I remember it took almost 6 months. I remember laying in my bed, and I don't remember what I was thinking about, but it kind of made me chuckle or laugh or giggle or something like that. And I swear to you, I don't care if you don't believe me, my heart started beating. I could feel it right through my chest. It was like it was the weirdest thing, and I'm like, that sucks. I thought it was cool for like 30 seconds, and then I realized that this is like I'm 42 years old and my heart's beating. Right?
I can sympathize with what it must be like to feel like you've missed out on all those years of having these emotions, but at the same time, I mean, it's not all bad because there's there's some movies that I would give anything to be able to watch it for the first time. So I mean, there's a lot of things that you get to experience for the very first time, and just like it's like when you smoke crack for the first time, you spent the rest of your life chasing that high, and it's similar with a lot of emotions and experiences. The very first time is the most emphatic that you'll feel that experience.
um, yeah, I would have to agree with that on pretty much all points. Um, Recovery has given me an opportunity to be prepared for what's about to happen. Like life isn't supposed to be easy, but through recovery, through the steps, through um, the dual diagnosis program, through all of the mental health stability, the emotional support, all of that stuff has now prepared me for life. Like I had built this person. Um, it was like I know it's a really old adage, but it's like I used to hurt, or I used because I hurt, and I hurt because I used. And I had set myself up in this perpetual motion machine that's all there was. Um, and I would obliterate to the point of there would be no return. And um, I almost got there in my using. I almost got to the point where um, I really didn't care. Um, yeah, I gotten to the point where it was just like somebody just, I'm either going to get hot shotted or murdered or overdosed. And I hope it happens soon because I didn't care anymore.
There's a lot of people out there that believe and will say that you made the decision to take the drugs in the first place, and therefore you should be held responsible for your own addiction. What would you say to those people?
60, 40, 40, 60. There is some truth to that. There are some days where, yeah, I chose dope over. Um, I remember there was somebody who was trying to get into a relationship with me, and I treated that person like a transaction, and he walked right out of the door, and that's one of my biggest regrets ever. I didn't see it until after I got into recovery that this person was like literally putting on like the full, dog and pony pull show, and like, hey, you're more important. I should be more important than dope, and I didn't care, and I watched him walk out the door. You know, I chose dope over education. I chose dope over relationships, money, prosperity, security. I remember that it was my lover, my best friend. It was the most important thing to me in all of existence. And then when I stopped using, it wasn't by choice. It was just something that was convenient for me at the time. And my higher power had a whole different idea of where I was going to go and what I was going to do. This time around in recovery, I didn't come to recovery. I was told that you're going here. So I went there, then I went here, and then I went there. And it was a little bit of divine intervention because I knew that there was a 6-month wait list on both places, and I had gotten in under 2 days. So, and the other thing is weird. The only thing that was reliable about me up until that point is that I would never actually not complete a treatment program. It was something that I held pretty dear, that I if I went into a treatment, I'll finish it and I'll see what I can get out of it. And I did that. And so I find that in recovery, not taking other people's inventory is really hard sometimes. However, with that being said, I'm not going to gauge my recovery against what the norm is, because each recovery is personal. It's a personal path of discovery of who, what, when, where, why, how, like a process of elimination, and then boil it down to whatever you're left to. Like, I remember doing calculus or algebra, then calculus, and I love the fact that I could take this equation and boil it down to the simplest form, and take that and then run with it. And that's what I find recovery to be, right? But you have to be honest about it, right? I chose to take I chose to take the dope because it made me feel good, right? But after a while, I chose because I didn't want to feel anything at all. And then when I got into recovery, it was I chose that, hey, maybe there's something to this. Let's figure out where it's going.
So I'm trying not to agree or disagree with you, but I have to ask, do you think it's fair that a 14-year-old who's been exiled from his home, left without a family, do you think it's fair that that child be held responsible for all of their decisions? And to such an extent that they be held responsible for the rest of their lives?
Okay, so in step one, it's our lives had become unmanageable. That powerless over my addiction, my life had become unmanageable. And step two is to be restored to sanity. Until I understood what those two things meant, I had no idea. Up until that point, until I did the steps, that my life had always been unmanageable, right? So it's like, if you grew up in a burning house, wouldn't the world be on fire, right? Like, it just, I didn't know that there was recovery until I found it. And the other thing is that sanity, I didn't understand sanity until it was put to me this way. It was like going home for Christmas and waiting for the presents and the money so I could get out of there as quickly as I could, because I couldn't understand why people were laughing and enjoying themselves and doing family things, it weirded me out and I didn't understand it, right? So it's like until I understood what was going on, um, I have to be still held accountable for my responsibilities and my actions. But it would be like, being thrown into like China, and it's like, hey, now you're gonna go figure out a way how to build a house, get a job. You can't speak the language, you don't know anybody, right? But you still are like accountable for your actions, right? So it's like, I feel that I feel that it's kind of like it. Yes, I still had to be held responsible for my actions. However, until I understood what those things meant, um, I think my higher power kept me alive long enough in order for me to figure that out. Um, in the sex trade, I this time around I didn't realize that I could have hurt a lot of people. I didn't know about the age of consent, and I was sleeping with a lot of men when I was 14, in and out of the gay bars. I was in the bathhouses. I was in the peep shows. There were years where I didn't use a condom. Years. And that was even after when Grinder came out. I didn't. I went years without using a condom. You know, like I remember getting so high and I did what I usually do and I passed out in the middle of winter at minus 45 and outside for 5.5 hours, and I froze the lower half of my body. Um, like there are things in my life that, when it comes down to consequence, the only thing that I can do is I have to realistically have a look at it to see what it is, to see if I can actually amend or fix what I've done, and that if I can't, then I have to do a living amends, and it's a very loaded question, right? Like, if you don't know, you know, how can I help you or why should I help you, right? It's like versus nurture versus nature, right? Are you going to nurture somebody so that they can see what's going on, so they can stop doing what they're doing, or fix it, or is it just nature? You know what I mean? Like, that's 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 a really hard question to answer, to be honest with you.
I think you did an excellent job of answering it, and I think what you're saying is you might not be responsible for the way you were brought up. You might not be responsible for the environment you found yourself in, but you're 100% responsible for how you take that and learn and grow and adapt from it.
Yeah.
And I think overall that's a very responsible way of looking at things. Um, I think that you've been made painfully aware of the consequences of your actions to an extent that many people will never actually get to.
Um, when it comes to that, I I find that perseverance and self-preservation are they're paramount and detrimental at the same time. Um, I I can't save the world. If I can't help myself, I can't heal myself. Like if I came into this with a fractured heart, right? Like filled with venom. Like it was pretty sick. And then after when I did the steps and I worked through these problems and these issues that I had, like my fractured heart was less and less of a burden and more of a joy, only just for the simple fact that like it was fractured enough to let all that venom out and to let the light in, right? Like it just when it comes to that, it's I'm only trying to prove a point of like unless I can heal myself, I can't help anybody, right? Like in my step one, it was kind of really interesting because I got to see that a glimpse of my future, right? I have the mind for education. I have the heart empathetic, and so it's like at first I wanted to become a social worker, but I'm too empathetic, and I would take the emotion with me, and I already I already wear my heart on my sleeve, right? But I do have the intellect, so it was like I was thinking about getting into psychology and help men that used to work in the sex trade who were addicted to chemsex, PNP. Like I wasn't the only one, right? But if I can figure out a way out and I can go back to help people out, right? I have the experience to let them know that hey, this is possible, right? But that's still the future. That's still down the road. But I I can't help unless I've healed myself. My fractured heart, like now I'm down to the dust. So eventually it will heal. Eventually, you know, the softer parts of life might happen, but that's like down the road.
It's still a good optimistic perspective. I think you demonstrate a high level of self awareness with remarkably little victimization and self pity. And I imagine that didn't come easy. So that brings me to want to ask, you said that you tried sobering up a couple of times. So what was it like the first time you realized you have a problem, you don't want to have this problem anymore? How did you tackle your addiction the first time around, the first real swing? Because I remember you said you used crack to get off of meth, use meth to get off of crack. When did you decide enough is enough, I want off of this, at least the first time? And what was that experience like?
Um. So, in all honesty, it was this time around in recovery. Um.
So this is the first real swing that you had at trying to get off of everything all
Yeah.
at once, alcohol, and other narcotics included.
Yeah. Before it was a place to stay. It was a way to get into a relationship. It was a way to get a job. It was
Sobering up was.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was a way to get something from somebody, and in very many different ways. I until I actually became wholeheartedly honest with myself and what was going on. Um, it was just another way for me to be a transactional being. It was just something to get something out of something. It wasn't about actually existing and learning about myself and um, becoming I don't know, I guess living a life worth living. Until this time, um, it was a means to an end, right? Poverty, dereliction, homelessness, being broke all the time. That's all it was to me. This time around, I was at Alpha and I was in the I was in the detox and I was waiting for treatment again. And they said that there was a meeting downstairs, so I decided to join. And there was a man there, business suit, it looked like a fish out of water. Like this person did not belong here. And I sat down and I listened to his story, and that man was honest about everything that he had done in his life and what he did to fix it. So it was the problem and solution and how he implemented it. And his story, for the first time in 8 years, I finally heard my story. They say when you go to meetings, you'll hear your story, and I thought it was a sham. It wasn't true until that one night where he sat and he told his whole story. And the only difference between him and I is that he was born in Winnipeg and I was born in Edmonton, and we had the same story. And he was wholeheartedly honest. And at the end of it, he had told us that he had years. And then it hit me, why not me? Right? That's why when I share my story, I don't leave out the injection or the chemsex or the prostitution or anything like that, because that man who I don't know, without hesitation, sat there and told his truth. And now I have a life worth living because of somebody I don't know.
So you alluded to this a couple times, the difference between what your life was like now versus what it was like before. Now you daydream about taxes. You're excited to go to work. Why don't you help me create a little bit more contrast there, some juxtaposition between what it was like and what it's like now?
So, um, it hurts a lot. It hurts really good. Um, it's kind of like a catch 22. There's a lot of things that I missed out on, but there's a lot of things I missed out on. There's I remember I had this one vision one time. It was really weird about sitting in a locked room with a big window, watching everybody get married and having kids and going on trips and doing all this stuff. And it was like it was almost fed to me like when Facebook started, and it was like, and I got to see everybody move on with life, and here I was standing still in a room with no door and one really big window. But you know, the thing is that now that I'm in recovery, it's like I got out of that and I got to experience life. And through trial and error and meeting a lot of people, it was like I missed out on a lot of things. And it was like, thank you. Thank you for not letting me having to go through those things. Um, and now,
So what kinds of things are you happy you missed out on?
marriage,
Yeah?
um,
Why?
kids, going on trips, families.
You're grateful to have missed out on those things.
Yes, yes. And because of recovery and because of meetings, I took a lot of notes. And so there's a lot of things that now I know to avoid. Um, there's there's a lot of things in life that I'm learning through others. I know now that, okay, so the simplest things in life are like the best, right? They are like laughter, um, uh, trust. I remember when I was at work the other day, I don't like walking home without my phone, and my phone was about to die, and I'd ask somebody, because I have a little bit of a journey to catch the train, and it goes through like a really weird park. Anyway, so, but I don't like going without my phone, and it was dying, and I'm like, I asked around my work, does anybody have this charger? And everybody said no, until this one lady, she's like, oh wait, yeah, I do actually, it's in my car. So I sat there and I waited. And she came around the corner. She's like, I'm really busy. She's like, here. And she gave me her keys. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went to the car, I grabbed the charger, and I came back in. She's like, no, I don't want to lose that. She's like, go in there, start the car, charge your phone, and turn on the heater. And I'm like,
This lady you've never seen before.
and I'm like, what?
Interesting.
Are you serious? She's like, yeah. She's like, just go charge your phone, go have a cigarette. She's like, at least get it charged so that you can get your walk home. And I'm just like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like it's the small things, right? Like I've seen people run out and get jobs. I've done that. I can't even say other people. Like I've done it for a person. I've done it for a place, a thing, a situation, money, all these materialistic things. And it was like until I could start doing things for myself, like it's the small things. Like it's just like um I know this sounds weird, but I don't flip out when somebody comes up behind me and gives me like a shoulder rub. You know, for the first time in my life, I'm not grabbing for something where I'm just like, why are you touching me, right? Um, I I'm I I'm laughing. I'm getting to know how people work and how I work around people. Um, like I'm trying to grow plants. I'm reading more books. I like it's just I like the fact that I'm in a routine, like I found a loaded pipe the other day and I smashed it, like it's 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 like little victories. Like the amount of clean time I have right now is a drop in a bucket, but I've probably done more in that, 8.5 months than I have done in my entire life. I've set goals and I've kept them, I've met them, and I excelled. Like I've charted a course back to university. I'm trying to take responsibility for my actions. I'm doing a living amends. I've been giving back through volunteering. Um, I still have problems sleeping. I still have problems where I remember when I was a kid, I would I'd plan for the future. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to do this. I'm going to save money. I'm going to get an apartment. Da, 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 da. I still do that. I have a hard time turning my brain off when I want to go to bed. But like in contrast to the life that I led, to the life I have now, I didn't realize that finding something that was more important than dope would actually change my life. And I found a couple of people, a couple of places, a couple of things that are more important to me than dope. And for me, that's powerful, right? Because like it was something that I worshipped. I remember trying to manipulate God into thinking that you need to give me this dope or I'm not going to live. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do that. And I couldn't believe that I actually was trying to manipulate God into you need to get me this dope. Like I just it was everything to me. It was what raised me. It was what gave me love. It gave me joy. It gave me comfort. For as long as it did, and then it turned into like this beautiful nightmare. I got whatever I wanted, but I got whatever I wanted, and it's not. It was like this absolute beautiful nightmare. I was so deluded and I was so obliterated that I remember getting sold by my ex, coming to being thrown out of the hotel room with my clothes and money being thrown at me, and then the door shutting. Like like that was a lot. And there was other moments where like, you know, um, going and shoplifting and getting away with money and food, or clothes and food, so that I would eat, but then I would be able to get high at the same time, right? Like, and now it's like I I know I joke around about this a lot, but it's true. It's like I know God loves me because, I go to work every day. They give me money every day, and it has cheesecake there. Like, you cannot tell me that God doesn't love me. You know what I mean? And it's like it's like dead center in the middle of like three major thrift shops. Like, like it's just like, yeah, no, I know I'm on the right path. I just, I'm living in a clean slate. In a clean slate situation. However, uh, I don't think I probably would have made it this far if I didn't drop everything in my life. And I mean everything. I don't talk to my parents. I don't talk to my sister. I actually, anything past 3 months ago, anybody who I'd met before that, I don't talk to. I had to decipher between trauma bonds, acquaintances, and friends. Trauma bonds mean that we have the same pain, we're headed in the same direction, and that's mostly where I would go back out. I would figure out who was transactional like me, and then we would both walk out of the treatment center. And then there's the acquaintances. It's like I know your name, I know very little about you, but that's it. And then friends are, I need to have some pretty substantial information about you. Doesn't mean it has to be like something like private, but I have to be able to know like a couple of family members' names and your birthday in order for you to qualify as a friend. It's not that it's not as stringent. It's not that's it, but it's like if the more intimate that I am with somebody, then I feel more comfortable with being a friend. Anything outside of that, like, is their trauma bonds and acquaintances. And it really kind of sucks because it cut my social circle from a bunch of people down to three. And I actually had to be really honest about that. And then, like, don't even throw the whole dating thing into the mix, because it's like now I have to learn more about another person, and I'm just like, I want to do this, but I don't know what to do with this kind of thing.
Well, it is noble to abstain from doing something that you feel might end up in, more pain, baggage, or trauma to another person that you may or may not inadvertently cause them. But on the other side of that, you also don't necessarily want to go into it because you don't. How do I put this? You don't want to go into it and end up tolerating more than you should tolerate because you don't want to hurt them.
See, I I don't want to go live life wearing mittens, right? You're gonna get scraped. You're gonna get cold. You're gonna get frostbite. Like life is still gonna happen. Like regardless of what I choose to like prepare for, right? Whether it be like through altruism or like boundaries or like assertiveness or whatever, all this stuff that I've learned, right? Until I put it into practice, like it's just like, you know, like the only thing, the point of reference I could give it to people, it would be like going on, you know, fresh out of high school or in high school, and you're going on your first date and you're learning how to be with somebody, right? Or like you're making friends out of the gate, and you're hoping that these friends are going to be lifelong, right? Well, nothing in life is guaranteed except for change and death
And taxes.
and tax. So I prepared myself as best as I can for whatever life's gonna happen. Like, you know, like I feel like I'm at the next stage in my life where I want to become intimate with people. I don't mean like in a sexual way, that too, but the thing is that like life is starting to prepare me for that. Life is going to start becoming a little bit more intimate because these people that you have in your life, well, there's going to be a lot of give and take, right? You're going to have to be very altruistic. You're going to have to be very assertive, and you're going to have to set healthy boundaries. But not only do they have to adhere to yours, but you have to adhere to theirs, right? There's a lot of balance there. There's a lot of like give and take. And if it starts to become a little bit more take, then somebody has to say something and not be resentful towards each other. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like variables. There's a lot of questions, right? Communication. There's a lot of things there that, you know, I'm prepared to do, right? And there's a lot of things there where it's like I want to learn how, I don't know, I guess for lack of a better phrase, to be a human being, but I can't do that without interacting with human beings, right? It's kind of like a shot in the dark. I kind of hope it works, but you know, recovery has set me up so that I can deal with the rejection or the loss or the success. You know, like it's not always negative, like all the good stuff too. It's like, yeah, hey, made it to a year, let's go celebrate, right? So it's like, no, I have to take everything with a grain of salt, you know, both the good and the bad, you know. And so far there's a lot of good. And now there's, you know, over the last little bit I've lost a couple of friends, and there's been a lot of bad, you know. I got rejected by someone for some particular reason, but I didn't use over it. I didn't throw my life down the gutter. I'm not gonna lie. Like there have been situations where I wanted to go back out, but like through divine intervention and just life and routine, nothing happened. Right? Like life is still going to be life. It's just I'm a little bit more prepared for it now.
Have you ever considered going to take some kind of counseling for relationships or other kinds of therapy?
Um,
If that's accessible to you?
no. Um, I I kind of want to have it more of like trial and error, right? Eventually, something's going to happen where, um, you know, life is just going to happen. And I think, to be perfectly honest with you, it's like take it slow, feet first, you know, and just do the next right thing. Set boundaries, communicate. I made the joke the other day. It was like, so how I'm gonna do it is if I ever end up in a romantic setting, I'm gonna sit there and I'm going to try to get to know this person as much as I can. And then if they ever ask why, and it's like, well, cause like I want to get to know you, right? Cause it's kind of like a false positive where it's like, I'll take it slow so I can get to know you, so that after when the honeymoon stage happens and it's over, and then I have something to fall back on to make you keep falling in love with me every single day after. It's kind of like backup insurance, you know. There's insurance and then there's backup insurance, because I've seen through meetings and living vicariously through others, the honeymoon stage ends. Like it just
Absolutely.
drops. But now that I've learned enough about you, I can keep making you fall in love with me over and over again.
Aw.
Yeah. So it's kind of like,
Well, you know what I'm gathering is where you're at is there's only so much that you can learn from theory, and there's a certain point where you have to get the actual practical experience.
jump off the pier, man. I'm doing it with friendships now, and I'm doing it with work. Like then the only natural next step is relationship, and I kind of feel like it's coming. I just don't know where or how or who. I don't know. Something inside of me is like, now that I've taken a step back and I've done the work, and like I went and I saw trauma counseling, and I went and I got all that stuff off my shoulders, and I've dealt with it. I'm doing what is necessary for me to maintain my emotional sobriety as well as my mental sobriety, but also physical sobriety from these drugs. That like I feel like that it's this the spirituality that I have, which just keeps pulling me forward. The more time that I have, it trickles down, right? Like it's not just about like romance or whatever. It's just that now that I've been in recovery for 10 years, like I remember going to treatment this time, and I sat there and we were doing the biological effects of drug use and the chemical use, to like the physical aspects of the brain, biology. And I sat there, and it's not to toot my own horn. This was an awakening for me. Was as I sat there and I taught. I was literally having an articulate, understandable conversation with a bioneurologist, and she was flabbergasted that I could talk the talk, walk the walk, and understand what these meanings and what they were used for and all this other stuff. And she's like, are you educated? And I'm like, no, I've taken this class about 15 times in 10 different kinds of treatment centers. I think recovery and treatment has taught me enough, and I think you're right. Practicing the theory now, because I'm mentally and physically prepared. Emotionally, I need to take a run at it, and spiritually, I know that that He's got my back. Right? I should be half of a man living in a hospice, dying from diseases, and I have my legs, and as of February 2024, I have a clean bill of health. There's nothing physically wrong with me for a 42-year-old man. Right?
They say that the one you're meant to be with, or whoever you're gonna fall in love with, comes when you expect it the least, and when you're not when you're out looking for them. So the fact that you have an open mind and just ready for whatever comes, maybe that's the right way to go about it. And like, obviously, I am nowhere near qualified to tell anybody who's ready or not ready, but I will say that the way that you're talking, you're saying a lot of things that I've gathered in therapy. Like, you've taken your own inventory, the things that you love about yourself, the things that you want to improve about yourself. And even if you don't love yourself as much as you want to, I know that you love the person that you aim to become, and you're working towards becoming that person. And with that, you've developed a list of non-negotiables, a list of things that are important in your partner. And these are a lot of things that, like, especially in our younger relationships, we don't really have that list. We go off of the belief that we're going to feel what's right. Right? When we have that person, we're going to feel it and we'll just know. And then we end up making it up as we go. And then, like you said, that honeymoon period is over, which experts have shown it lasts anywhere from 6 months to 2 years if you're exceptionally lucky. And then afterwards, if you don't have a really, really good reason or list of reasons to stay with somebody, then that just breeds resentment, regret, guilt, self-loathing, and hatred of a lot of things, including life. Yep. So I don't know. I think you're doing things pretty well. But again, it's not for me to say.
So I'm really spiritual, and I find that I have a carrot at the end of the stick. The thing that keeps me going is that, like, in recovery they talk about step 13, and the message is so skewed. It's not about getting laid. It's I think the reason why the first 100 made it the first 100 and died sober is that the end game through the steps and through recovery is to die sober. But it doesn't mean just dying sober. It means meeting my Creator with sober eyes and clean hands, so I can go with Him freely, right? And anything that gets me to that point, like, that would be, like, if you really think about it, that would be probably one of the most coveted gifts in all of creation, right?
To die sober and meet your Creator.
And to go freely without any attachment, without any fear, right? And, like, I found that through the steps I have this spiritual journey of being able to get that and maintain it, right? But then also I also have a way of dealing with life. I have a way with dealing with gains and losses. I have a way of dealing with, like a multitude of different areas in my life, but I can't pick up. I can't. When I start to get comfortable, I have to check my motives, because when I'm comfortable, it usually means I'm heading back in the same direction I just came from. When I'm uncomfortable and I'm fearful, it usually means that I'm doing something right, or that I'm headed in a direction I've never been before. Like when I when I laugh with people and when people come and hug me, I run away. I still do that. I remember somebody coming up and just giving me a bear hug, and I ran away.
Like actual run.
I said I had to go do something, and I ran away.
Full sprint to the other direction.
I did run
Full
down
tilt.
the hallway, yeah. And then I had to go back to see where that person was, because I wasn't too sure if they were following me. But you know what I mean? Like, it just I still have some stuff. There's a lot of, it's everything's brand new and shiny, but then everything is brand new and shiny, and but I have a carrot at the end of the stick, like is this gonna get me to what I've come to the conclusion is like, when I come across a situation, and not always, and it doesn't happen all the time, I'm not perfect, but I when it does and it pops up, there's a reason why this question pops up. Is this going to interfere with me going to bed sober to wake up clean? Because even in the first couple of years of recovery, that should probably be the only thing that is important to me at this time, right? And it's not to be like honest with a razor and go up to this person, this is why, blah, 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 right? It's like just to take stock of the situation and like plan accordingly. Like, there's still people out there that I know that still use. Like, there's people that I run into all the time, right? But if it's going to interfere with me going to bed sober to wake up clean, that's one of the prerequisites of why I don't talk to my family anymore. I am alone, but I'm not alone. I have friends. I have everything that I need for a life worth living. I have, what I need to move forward with my life. Mind you, I still have some pretty healthy resentments and some judging stuff where I judge a lot. But I'm trying to use it to the best of my ability as a strength rather than as something detrimental. Rather than sitting there and judging people, I use it to judge situation, people, places, and things in more of a beneficial way of like, is this going to interfere with me going to bed to wake up sober? Rather than, I really don't like you and I don't like what you're wearing, will get away from me. I have to stop being that person.
Superficially critical.
I totally am. I mean, sorry. I was. I'm working on changing that part of me too, right? Because it's an uphill battle. You're not, like I'm not gonna get it all in one day, but I have the honesty and like the cognitive ability to see that this is what's going on, right? And I try to respond and not react. And if it's gonna interfere with me going to bed sober to wake up clean, sorry, veto. Like that's it. Like I have to set my boundary and go to bed sober to wake up clean.
So when you were younger, 14, left to fend for yourself, right up until you entered recovery, your life was largely chaos through and through from morning to night. When the proverbial shit wasn't hitting the fan, you were just trying to find your next fix and get through. So basically, what I'm saying is you didn't really have any space in your head to expand your consciousness towards who you want to be, what your boundaries are. You're always just trying to live and survive the moment. Whereas now you're expanding your thoughts to where you want to be in the future, who you want to be, what you're grateful for, and it seems to me like you're getting a whole great deal of pleasure in getting to know yourself in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
And so right before we started the podcast, you asked me, you're like, how do what kind of hobbies can I get? What are some things that I like can do to make my days meaningful? But it seems to me that you're getting an incredible amount of meaning out of learning who you are and what you want. Just the process of learning those things might be the end game goal for now, at least.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
No. It does. I find that I like existentialism and like God of the machine is going on right now. I just it's not a crisis. It's more of like shutdown. It's like shutting down a plant, right? And like time management and finding what qualifies as equity. Like when I got sober, like I realized that I was intelligent. Like it was so it fractured me. Like when I applied for university and I got in on my first try. Like there's a lot of stuff about my life that I came to learn about myself where like I didn't realize that like I'm sitting there and I'm having a conversation with a biologist, but I'm not doing a mimic. I'm actually having a clearing conversation and having an understanding about like the biomechanics of like how like neurotransmitters work. You know what I mean? Like I just like there's a waking up into kind of like a prepackaged human, and I didn't realize that was possible. Like right now, I like when I first got into recovery, I was still stuck on piercings and tattoos, and now I'm leaning towards more of like spiritual enlightenment and like cognitive abilities and like neuroplasticity and like how to maintain my physical appearance. And it's not in a vain way. It's just that like the mechanics behind of why I need to do this. I need to start preparing for my future. I'm getting older, and my mobility is not going to do this. I'm not in my 20s. My mobility is going to start doing this, and I have to prepare for that, right? So if I get healthy now, I'm going to live probably a longer, healthier life.
And something you didn't mention with what you're doing now is, and just knowing you personally, I know you're very committed to going to the gym very frequently. And you do that multiple times a week.
Yeah, 5 days.
That's very impressive. And that's like, I think that itself puts you in like the top 5-10% of people.
Oh, cool. Never thought about that. That's cool.
I think it's a really interesting concept, the 13th step being dying sober to meet your creator with sober eyes and clean hands to leave freely, because that seems to be the way that we die and leave this earth. Seems to have had a significant importance throughout almost every culture. Like the Vikings wanted to die with a weapon in their hand so that they would be able to defend themselves in the afterlife. The Egyptians wanted to die wearing gold so they'd be able to buy their way into heaven. In Western culture, we seem to want to die without regrets because, and it's like almost, it's become like a Hollywood trope. Whereas if you die with regrets, then you're going to be left to wander the earth until you deal with those things that are holding you here. And so something that I've noticed is when things like that, even if they might not seem very grounded on your first glance, when they repeat themselves, they're definitely worth analyzing.
So in ancient Egyptian philosophy, it's it was called going west. They followed the path of the sun, so it would rise in the east and it would set in the west. And what they believed was is that as it rose, there would be Amun Ra Kepri, and then it would go to Ra, and then to Atum, right? So it would be the path of Ra. And then once it would hit the horizon, it would become Amun Ra Arusa. So that would be Amun Ra Osiris. It would be the king god of the underworld. Now, what they would believe in is that it was called going west. So it would be the path of the sun. It would be going west, and as you would, the sun was set, your life would change, and you would transform into spirit or whatever, and then you would meet Anubis, and he's actually called the master of secrets, or the protector of the Westerners. Right, he would be the one who would watch over the graves and the dead as they journeyed through. It was called Armenta, and Armenta was the city of the dead. It was where you would come to after you died, and you would journey, and you would go to the afterlife, and you would come to the Hall of True Truth, right? And they would judge your heart, and the reason why I believe is because it's the only part of the human experience that cannot lie. Right, so it's like, and then you were faced with questions. Like I overheard one time that it was 3 questions. Have you ever brought joy to someone else's life? Have you ever had joy in your life? And did you ever work to help, to be of service to your brothers and sisters? Right, like these are the things that matter most to me. Like it's not like I don't want to like aim for like materialistic wealth and abundance and all this stuff. But in all reality, like our life is just a blip, and I understand why it would be like live fast, live fast, die hard, leave a pretty corpse, and I completely comprehend it. I get it. I totally understand it. However, and from the other standpoint of it is that through my experience, I don't want to come back. I don't want to live this life again. I need to do everything to the best of my ability to be of service, to bring joy to other people's lives and my own. Right? I need to do once it becomes, a little bit more flexible, and in order for me to do that, like I want to prepare for my afterlife, right? Because life is never guaranteed. And then once I've done the steps and I've worked through the trauma, and I've let stuff go, and I've, become ready to own up to my responsibilities, like I'm preparing myself, because like I'm at that point where it's like I want to prepare for my afterlife, wherever it leads me to, right? Like just to do the next right thing. And I don't want to add to my step 4. I don't want to add to my step 6. Like I have done the work, and it fractured all parts of me, but it was just enough to let the light in, right? And then now the light's in there. It's like now I'm preparing for my, for the rest of my life, whatever that may be, right? Like I to be prepared to do the next right thing, to be of service to my fellows, like that for me, that would bring me joy. And eventually somebody, maybe, God willing, I get to take care of someone else's heart eventually, or whenever. And I feel that this time in recovery, I had to do 27 years of catch up in a matter of a year, because I don't know. I feel like life is fast tracking me so that when life happens, not when if it's when life happens, I feel that through recovery and the steps and sponsorship and meetings and all this other stuff, other stuff that has been handed to me has been fast tracked to me, and then now it's like now I have to put practice in the theory, right? Like I feel that dying sober with clean eyes and sober yeah. Yeah.
That was right.
That to meet my maker is like I want to prove I want to press that point when I go to meetings that disinformation and this skewed message, like you have to really really be aware of what's going on, because like it was the unspoken step. Like it was the point of, well, I feel it was the end game to the steps. It wasn't about putting all of your dirty laundry on display and making sure that you're thrust into like depression and whatever. It was this is the person who I built. This is the person who I became. This is what I can do to deal with it, and this is what I can do to have a happy ending. I found that, and then now I found out after the end of my steps when I was done was just like, it's because of this, so I can meet my maker with clean eyes and sober hands, or sober eyes and clean hands, and now I have a process of I have a way of being able to do that, right? Like I want to head west, and I want to do it with clean hands. I want to be able to have like the mental clarity and the emotional stability in order for me to continue to head west, and hopefully I can find a couple of people to head there with me. Like it's just it's really just interesting. I like putting practice in the theory. It's not it's it's not fun. It's not it's something that you really need to be prepared for. Because life is still life, right? Whether it be by mittens or razors, you're gonna live it. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like I've amassed and accumulated enough knowledge. Now I got to turn that into wisdom, and when I turn that into wisdom, I got to put that theory into practice. I can talk a pretty big game about certain things at meetings, or like oh, I get up in the morning, I do the step 10 prayer. It's like, no, I do not. To the best of my ability, yes, right? I'm still a human being. I'm still going to make mistakes, but it doesn't mean that I have a sense about me that I know what's right and what's wrong. Even though I walk past the bathroom 13 times in the last week, even though I need to clean it, right? But right, that's the thing, right? This is at least I have an understanding that it needs to get clean, and then I'm probably going to get in trouble if I don't do it.
Well said. Well, is there anything else that you would like to say to people that are maybe struggling, or maybe people that I like to think that what the people that will benefit the most out of hearing things like this are people that don't understand or haven't seen firsthand or secondhand or what have you, what it's like to grow up with such a traumatic upbringing, what it's like to struggle with addiction. And so is there anything maybe you'd want to say to the world of normies, as you might call them?
Okay, so when I had the analogy of going home for Christmas and not being able to understand, and the sanity of that world made me so uncomfortable, I just wanted to run. I think you need to know that it was probably a piece of heaven you gave them. That moment, like, I know it's weird, and that they're probably using, or they're probably drinking, or you're running off of an old stigma or an old idea of who they are, or what you thought they should be, or whatever. If it ever came to and they fell asleep, You probably are probably giving them a piece of heaven. Um, Apart from all the sides of, stigma and, prejudice and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah, you're probably, the eye of the storm. And there's probably a lot of judgment. There's probably a lot of anger and resentment and all this other stuff. And you shouldn't be here. This is like my family's here and this and that. And it's like, you know, uh, they probably watched a friend die. They probably overdosed themselves. They've probably done things for dope so that they don't have to remember or feel anything. And you are probably giving them a moment of solace, peace, and heaven. So
Just by allowing them a little moment where you're not persecuting them,
yeah,
judging them.
food, something to drink, some conversation, and that's probably it's probably God speaking through the like you guys and giving us like a moment of silence.
A little kindness goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does.
Thank you, Dawson. I hope you enjoyed yourself as much as I did. Um, I think this went really well, and I think you offered a lot of insight into what it's like.
Thanks.